Grab your pre-workout and turn up that volume. It is time for a new episode of the Powerlifter's Den with your host, Cam Smith. What's up, Powerlifter's Den family? Want to rep the podcast and look good while doing it? Check out my official merch store at plden.company.site. We've got tees, hoodies, beanies, hats, and more, and gear that'll keep you motivated in and out of the gym. Every purchase helps support me and the podcast and keeps the den growing strong. So whether you're hitting a heavy squat session or just lounging in style, we've got you covered. Head to plden.company.site and grab your merch today. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Powerlifter's Den. I'm your host, Cam Smith, and today I wanted to bring on someone from the New England area, someone who's been competing in both strongman and powerlifting for a long time. So, Carlos, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey, how's it going, everybody? Carlos Reyes, recently retired powerlifter, longtime retired strongman, firefighter as well, and now just trying to be a regular dude.
Yeah, so I think this episode will be really cool to kind of talk about the tactical fitness you mentioned in your questionnaire. But before that, let's get a little bit of background on you, kind of before you got into powerlifting. Maybe tell us about your strength journey up to that point.
Okay, yeah. So I started lifting weights in general for high school football. I never really was a good athlete growing up. Got into Pop Warner kind of late. Knew I wanted to play in high school, but wasn't very good. So I said, okay, I have to be bigger and stronger and faster than everybody. So my 13th birthday, I got a Planet Fitness membership for a birthday present. Planet Fitnesses used to actually be pretty decent.
Yeah.
It was not bad. And literally from the first time I went to the gym, I was completely obsessed. At the time, resources were really limited in terms of like finding information. Animal Pack, like the supplement company, had a pretty good forum. I also used to use the Elite FTS website, Westside Barbell articles, but just totally immersed myself in that. Was kind of training on an Olympic lifting hybridized program for a couple of years because I thought that would be best for developing explosive power for football. And then I ended up kind of meeting somebody off chain at an Animal Pack event at the now Powerhouse New Haven. I was one of the only strength focused guys at this bodybuilder event. And he said, hey, I do this stuff called strongman, like you've seen on TV. Why don't you come out and just see what it's all about? So I was there and had really no idea what I was getting into. And it was actually Derek Poundstone's training group at the time. And my jaw hit the floor as soon as I walked in and fully immersed myself in a strongman. Did that for 5 years and then found powerlifting once I had turned pro and fully immersed myself into that. Kind of forgot about strongman almost immediately. I thought it was kind of a better fit for me, and I did that from 2013 till just this July.
Yeah, so I guess one of the questions for me would be, I feel like a lot of people end up going kind of the opposite way. I feel like they start in powerlifting and then they go try strongman and they kind of go that route. There's even tons of professional strongmen now, like Nick Best is a great example of that. And
Yeah.
so coming from the other way, what are some of the things that you learned from strongman that helped you in your powerlifting career?
Yeah, so honestly, the reason I went the other way, I knew I wanted to do something other than just preparation for football. And I was honestly most interested in powerlifting, but at the time it was all multiply and it's just kind of intimidating. It really, the gear aspect of it did not interest me at all. Um, so kind of falling into strongman just by chance like that, I'm like, okay, this seems like more of a, I don't want to say pure. I used to be a raw snob and I'm not. I'm not a hater anymore. I've reformed. But it just looked a little simpler and I kind of like the idea of lifting odd objects. Biggest things I learned from from strongman rather. At the time, strongman in the United States at the amateur level was kind of really developing. Uh, it was always kind of a brute strength sport
Mm-hmm.
where there wasn't a whole lot of technique. It was just about like muscle fucking shit.
Yeah.
Uh, Derek Poundstone at the time was one of the early guys that really became a technician on the events. And I had the technical kind of mindset and way of breaking down lifts from the Olympic lifting. So like something I was doing back then at the time was like split jerking the log and split jerking the axle. Like nobody was really doing that.
Yeah.
Now it's relatively common. But really kind of like breaking down lifts and getting into the technical aspect and like watching film over and over again definitely came from strongman. The biggest thing, honestly, is just like how to strain. A lot of these strongman events, even the ones you try to, technify, they're not technical. Like it's just how long can you suffer for? Like a Husafel carry, Conan's wheel. There is nothing technical about those at all. It's like, hey, how long can you just endure having your diaphragm compressed?
Yeah.
You know. So
And
really, the ability to grind and work hard really came from strongman.
yeah, and kind of before we talk about that a little bit, you said you're a reformed multiply hater. I guess what kind of changed your opinion on that?
Just seeing other people that I'm really good friends with. Like I'm friends with everybody down at Hellbent.
Yep.
Like listen, nobody's winning a presidential medal of freedom for their powerlifting. You know what I mean? What it's really about, and this goes into strongman and into my powerlifting career. It's about having fun. It's about the community aspect, right? You can get high and mighty on interpretation of the rules,
Yeah.
right? But really, it's getting people in a community setting. It's keeping people sober. It's keeping people disciplined. So who am I to judge? And if their interpretation of the rules satisfies them, then why should I be talking shit if I'm not involved in the sport?
100%. And for
Like
me, it's like,
all these like high squat controversies that comes from raw guys. Like
yeah,
the multiply guys don't seem to care. So
no,
why should I be upset?
yeah, we only care if it's like egregious or like it makes us look bad. But at the like
Right.
1 or 2 inches, we're like, whatever. They passed
Whatever.
it. But like, kind of what you were saying about the community with it, it's like when people ask like, why do you do it? It's like it's fun. I just like doing it. Is there a problem with that? There should not be a problem with what I want to do.
Yeah. Something I will give the multiply community flowers for. Um, like my first meet, Bob Merck was there competing raw, and
Yep.
he's since transitioned to multiply. A couple other guys I know have gone raw into multiply. The community aspect, it's 10 times what it is in raw powerlifting. Because like raw powerlifting, you can do by yourself.
Yeah.
Right? And that was something that appealed to me. That's what made me like it so much. Is I like training around other people, but strongman I was always training in groups, and it was great. Don't get me wrong, but I was just kind of past that when I wanted to do powerlifting. But like gear, you depend on your people and your community. And like, again, to give props to the Hellbent guys, like they fly across the country to like squeeze people into briefs and like rap and spot. Like, not everybody does that. You got to give them credit, man. That is so cool.
Yeah, and that's what I love being so connected with them through obviously Covenant Conjugate, Skiba being our coach, and up at Evolve and New Hampshire and everything and all that. Like we're such a tight knit community now that we are able to learn from each other and train from each other. Kind of like I feel like that same type of community aspect is present in Strongman, maybe in a different manner, but maybe you can expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, that community aspect is definitely more prevalent in strongman as well over like raw powerlifting. So like going back to kind of my strongman days, like '08 to 2013. So I was training with Derek Poundstone. Basically, at the time, all the stuff was stored inside of a commercial gym, and about 80-90% of it needed to be took outside and set up.
Yeah.
So, you're talking like 30, 45 minutes minimum as a group, like setup and breakdown and cleaning, making sure we're not destroying the commercial gym with tacky and chalk and things like that. So, there was kind of a team aspect with that. I know as well, like when we were getting ready for major contests, or especially because that was really when Derek was in his prime, runner up at World's Strongest Man, winning the Arnold, Fortissimus, things like that. People would just show up to like help him load weights because, they're like, hey, we want you to focus on your training and not all this setup that's very backbreaking. So yeah, that community is definitely present in strongman. Now I'm at Lightning Fitness. I've been going on and off for years, but now I've been a full time member since I moved to the town that it's in, South Windsor, since 2018. The strongmen, maybe they don't train together. It's not like I go, you go on the log, but they're all together. Like, they're breaking each other's lifts down. When somebody's going, everybody's watching, giving each other feedback, filming, things like that. So
Yeah.
definitely more of that community aspect in that community as well.
Yeah, and as far as the training goes, I always like to ask people who've done strongman kind of how they structure their training because it's interesting to see how people structure it with having like all these weird different things that you do. So obviously I know like during competition prep, like you got to start training the movements and if you're limited in your gym, like it can be difficult in that. And obviously training the compound movements are just, it is what it is. But as far as like kind of overall structure, how did you approach it?
So at the time, again, this is like pre-social media, and this is like early strength stuff being on the internet. Nobody had a coach. Like programs really like weren't a thing. Like 531 kind of came out, I think, in 2008, 2010 era. Like you'd see Mark Phillippi's deadlift program or like Brad Gillingham's, you know, deadlift program as well. But there wasn't like this all-encompassing template for how to do strongman. There wasn't even programs like that going around for just the regular lift. So a lot of the stuff I did back then was kind of piecemeal. So I actually did do conjugate later in my career for like my gym lifts
Hmm.
and some of the static events for strongman. Then I transitioned to 531, but it was very like chopped up. So, like you were talking about access to the implements. So, I really only had access on the weekends, as did most of us. Like Saturday was the big, like all day training event.
Hmm.
So, you kind of did gym lifts during the week. There really wasn't, utilization of implements on a daily basis during your programming. And basically, Saturdays was like doing a show. Saturdays was a kill fest. It was like 5 hours long. I used to like bring food. Was all 5 hours like super productive? Like, no, like we were
Yeah, yeah.
talking, hanging out. Don't get me wrong. A lot of setup, a lot of breakdown. But it was brutal, and I'm not gonna say it was like the most intelligently structured program. What I liked about conjugate was I would just pick exercises because like for your squat and deadlift and even your stationary pressing movements, those are kind of your accessory work to your implements.
Yeah.
So it really doesn't matter like what you do. Like I can rotate bars and use bands and chains and all this stuff, and like it's fine. It doesn't matter. So basically, like how I would select exercises for my gym lifts to do conjugate with was like, all right, what's gonna suck the most?
Yeah.
Like what's just gonna absolutely kill me, and I'm just gonna do like an RP 10 single. Like, used to do like Zercher rack pulls against like heavy band tension, overhead against bands, uh, crazy, crazy shit like that. And yeah, then the weekends was just we would typically do a press carry event or two. Stones were always a thing. That was always the last thing to do. And me and a few guys in the group, we basically would just set up a medley at the end of the day and just be like, all right, let's just like kill ourselves. Like, let's just see what we can do. Like, drag this chain and push this sled and carry this farmer's implement and pick up this stone and shoulder it. Like, it was almost like a brutally heavy, shorter duration CrossFit workout. And like the sole purpose was to make you like want to puke or die. So it wasn't very intelligent. Like I handled it because I was definitely younger and had the recovery capacity. But later in my career, once I definitely started getting stronger, it definitely led to some burnout and some injury, strawman. I think even done properly, programming has come a long way.
Yeah.
Like the guys at Lightning now have access to the implements every week, so it's sprinkled in with the gym lifts. They're doing some sort of implement almost every day that they're there. Much more intelligent. The static lift programming is much more intelligent. There's real coaches out there that have really dialed in how to train for such diverse events on a more sustainable level. But it's inherently really hard on your body.
Yeah. But kind of on the flip side, though, I feel like kind of with that limited access by doing like a full, like you said, almost doing a show, when it came to like show day, like you guys were probably in pretty good condition to get through the show.
Oh yeah, yeah. So like I was so blessed to be in that group. It at the time was really, if we weren't the best training group in the country, we were like top three or top five because it's such a small sport. The expectation was so high. Yeah, in between the social hour and everything like that, but you were sending it on every set. Like and the shows that we used to do at the local and regional level were the heaviest shows in the country, bar none. So when it did come time later in my career to like go to men's nationals and go for my pro card and things like that, the show was easy, you
Yeah.
know, because you were basically running through it almost every weekend, and kind of like how we would structure the training, basically you do like, linear block for the events, or at least I did. Not
Yeah.
everybody was super great with programming in that group. Most people would basically do like a log single and then like carry something heavy for like 25 feet and then do like a stone single. And that was kind of it. But, start somewhere below show weight, pretty far out, a lot of reps, very long distance on the carrying events, very high rep on the loading events. And then the goal as I peaked closer to the show was to always be over show weight, for at minimum almost like a full block.
Yeah. And
So,
kind of from transitioning from the strongman to powerlifting, like I know you said you did a meet kind of in between turning pro, and then you kind of actually like fully committed to it after the second meet, the Raw Unity in 2014. What was that kind of turning point for you that it made it happen in the second meet, not necessarily the first one?
so at the time in strongman is like way different now. It's more developed. Yes, it still pales in comparison in terms of participation to like raw powerlifting. But really, the the goal was kind of like the pro card.
Hmm.
Like getting a lightweight pro card was a big deal, and after that, that was kind of it. Like there was no Arnold Classic, there was no OSG. Basically, once you turn lightweight pro, you were just kind of subject to doing pro nationals, 105 America's Strongest Man, which was not super appealing at the time, and then you could compete at local shows as a heavyweight, and then that was really it.
Yeah.
So there was really nothing to do, and I like put my heart and soul into, it's like a dog chasing a squirrel. Like, all right, I got the squirrel. Now what? And
Yeah.
the answer was like, I don't know. I was very burnt out and blown up when I got my pro card. So I decided to do a powerlifting meet in 2013 because I had some injuries with my low back. Everything is low back and strongman,
Yeah.
and everything's a deadlift. And like I'm not built conventional deadlift, so I was always fighting this on again, off again low back pain. The year that I really got the strength to push my pro card and win men's nationals, I was training like a powerlifter anyway.
Yeah.
I was actually doing less event training than pretty much everyone I was competing with. Stole that concept from Dan Harrison at the time, who was a heavyweight pro, and I believe he competed at World's Strongest Man a couple times. So I kind of was already powerlifting. So I had like I just missed pro nationals, and I needed to fill something in until the next pro nationals while I rehabbed. So I did RPS Raw Nationals. Kevin Oak was there, Bob Merck was there, a couple other really good guys were there, and I'm like, God, this is cool. Like I can vibe with this. I'm not feeling the love quite yet, but like I'd like to do another one. I'm not really in a rush to get back to strongman. It'll always be there. I'm only like 20 years old, so I'll get to it when I get to it. And it was going around. I think this was early Facebook. I saw this thing like Raw Unity. It was no federations. It was just about like unifying people from federations and across the country all over the sport. All the big names at the time were doing it. The Lilla Bridges, Milanichev, all these other guys. I kind of Dan Green.
Hmm.
So I'm like, what the heck? I don't remember what the qualifying total was, but I had the qualifying total, so I signed up and just kind of walking into weigh-ins. I'm like, where has this been? This is just so much cooler. I'll be fully transparent. I had a massive ego doing strongman. I was a young guy. I struggled for a couple years, but I relatively shot to the top kind of quick.
Hmm.
I had won teen nationals twice. I won men's nationals as a teenager, which I believe at the time was like the first ever. I got my pro card. I was the second youngest guy at the time to ever get a pro card. I was very used to like instant success and being the man.
Yeah.
And then I saw Dan Green in person, just like what his lat insertion and his ass looked like. I'm like, why have I ever had an ego about anything? Like I'm a nobody. This is the land of giants.
Yeah. And
And the other big sell to it too was at the time the middleweights were kind of the stars of the show because it was like Dan and Kevin, T. Cummins, Ernie Lillibridge Jr. So like with strongman as a 105K pro, you were always like the redheaded stepchild of the heavyweights.
yeah.
But I felt like, hey, no matter how strong you are, like if you're really putting up numbers in powerlifting, again, we don't do it for the attention or the accolades or anything like that. But I really felt like everyone at that contest was equal. And this is what I was kind of searching for. And also too, another reason I kind of got out of strongman and was getting frustrated is it's a shit show. Like There's no time to warm up. The events change at random all the time. You show up to contests and the weights aren't what they said they were. They're either like way lighter or way heavier. I've competed in strongman in everything from 110 degrees in Atlantic City on the boardwalk in July to 2 degrees in a barn in upstate New York.
Oh, geez.
So, like, powerlifting, I was so curious about, like, just all right, instead of being like kind of good at a bunch of things, like, what can I really produce under ideal, never changing conditions? So that was really kind of what sold me on powerlifting is kind of the more continuity and environment and structure.
Yeah, and you kind of going back to the ego from it, like you said, you kind of were kind of one of the top dogs in the lighter weight classes in strongman, and came to powerlifting and kind of almost got, I guess you could say, like a slice of humble pie. What was that kind of experience like for you? Like, how did you take that and use that to your advantage?
I mean, it was like, in the short term, it was definitely a kick in the nuts, but like it was inspiring. I'm like, oh man, like these guys are really pushing the limit, and because they're solely focused on just doing three things.
Hmm.
So if I put my nose to the grindstone for a few years and really focused on this endeavor and kind of have moved past strongman, like what could I do too? So I wouldn't say it like stung too much, or other than just that quick check. It was immediately almost motivating. I'm like, oh no, these are the strongest 220 and 242-pound guys in the world. Yes, strongman is cool and it was impressive. Don't get me wrong, but at the time, like I thought what Dan Green was doing was more impressive than like what the top 105 pros were doing in strongman. It's a completely different sport. I'm not trying to compare the two, but just thought it was cooler.
Yeah, and that's what I find funny about people who see it from the outside. Like strongman obviously has that more, I guess you can call it curb appeal to like the normal person because oh, this person is running a half mile with a fridge or they're
Yeah,
picking up a big ass stone. Like I can see why that's impressive, but when they look at like powerlifting is actually boring as fuck to watch. Like you just
it's
watch,
really boring. Yeah,
and
it's really
but
boring.
people that get it, and it's like so much cooler to. It's almost like a contradictory of like since it's only three things, you have to be really good at those versus pretty
Right.
good at a bunch of things.
Right, right. Because a lot of the strongman events, like especially the oddball ones, were kind of just about like survival,
Yeah.
you know, and like what's a good number, what's a good distance. I don't know. Let's just like let it rip and see how it goes.
Yeah.
But powerlifting was very digestible. Because again, I was always a technician guy. I love the numbers. Not a math guy, but I love the strength numbers.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like I watch powerlifting meets all the time at home. I'm a huge fan of tested powerlifting. Like I love watching IPF worlds, and like especially the women. And like if you understand the numbers they're doing, like there's 165-pound drug tested, and I believe they're 100% natural men totaling almost 2,000 pounds in knee sleeves
Yeah.
under IPF conditions. It's unbelievable. Like to see how far the progress is coming. The amount of women that are tested, like squatting and deadlifting 500 pounds, like at light body weights, like man, the numbers are great. But yeah, from a spectator thing, like if you don't get the numbers, you're just like, oh, is that good?
Yeah, and that's kind of even as a fan of powerlifting, like obviously I want everyone to compete. Everyone can do whatever federations they want, but to me, that's why I'm so more interested in like that multi-pie world or like the other federations where it's like you got like RPS, they got the fucking green plates and the green monos, and people are
Yeah,
all in the gear, and it's just I feel like it's when it's gritty and dirty, it's more entertaining than like for example, like IPF worlds that's so like clean cut, like the crowd's quiet, there's like golf
yeah.
claps, and like to me that doesn't like entertain me, but I can see the appeal for someone to be like, all right, this is a big stage, like I want to show out.
Yeah, and like I get the appeal of multiply. Like it just doesn't appeal to me. So like one of my earliest mentors was Vinny DeCenzo. Vinny really taught me how to bench. I trained with him on and off for a couple years when I transitioned over to powerlifting. But he had experienced doing bench only meets when they were on TV and like when a little more of the general public was paying attention to the bench world records when it was like the race to 1,000 pounds for the first time.
Hmm.
I forgot what meet he was referencing, but was just talking about how much mainstream appeal it had and how many like mainstream non-powerlifting fans were kind of involved in pumping it up. And his argument at the time, and I completely understand, was like, listen, the general public doesn't care. All they see is like a lot of weight and like, you know, they might not know what 900 pounds over your face feels like, but like they see all those plates on the bar and they see you moving it and they're like, holy shit, like it definitely is appealing. And I give gear guys credit too. Like I actually really love the single ply in IPF. Um, watching these guys like, hit a grand on like a power bar and like how there's absolutely no room for error. Like I don't do it. I can't relate, but like, oh my God, that's got to be really difficult, And same thing for my friends in multiply. Like, all right, yeah, I might have a different opinion on what the rules are, but my God, that's gotta suck. And like, good for you.
Yeah, like Blaine Sumner, for example, is like a perfect like his he. I still think he's probably one of the best of all time, and just in general, just for
Absolutely.
what he's been able
Absolutely.
to total under under the strictest conditions, like combo rack, power bar, walking out
Oh yeah.
1100 or whatever, self handing out 1,000 on bench, like that is almost more impressive than completing the lift.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Like that bar oscillation on a power bar with that kind of weight. Oh my God. And just the fact that you can walk it out, never mind do anything with it, is incredible.
Yeah,
And then like he does the self handoffs in the shirt. He trained his whole career like by himself in his garage. Like, wow, dude,
yeah,
that's amazing. Amazing, amazing.
yeah. And then it's kind of going more about your powerlifting career. Tell us maybe where you started training. I know you're at your Lightning now. Kind of tell us about your gyms throughout the years and maybe some of the people you trained with.
Yeah, so I've touched on training with Poundstone's crew. When I was at UConn as a student, I that was when I first got over to Lightning Fitness.
Hmm.
I linked up with my friend Paul Milano, who owns a Resilient Training Lab. He was in the same fraternity as me as college, and then all the meatheads on campus kind of find each
Yep.
other. So he was my training partner for years when I did strongman, and then kind of through my powerlifting career. We would make the drive from UConn over to Lightning, and like the early days it's a huge gym now, man. He's got to have, I don't know what the number is. It's got to be 500-600 members now. It's
I know
complete.
I haven't been able to make it there yet. I don't know. I can't wait to see it. I've heard that he has every piece of equipment under the sun and
Everything. And if there's something he doesn't have, just tell him and like he'll order it right in front of you. You know. But the early days of Lightning was all college kids. And Matt was kind of like the older big brother. Um, just like everybody was doing a competition and everybody was doing something big at their level. It was just all competitors and it was so, so cool. Then once I got done with college, was at Hardcore Fitness a couple years, ended my strongman career there, started the early powerlifting career there. That's where I met Mike Skiba and all the guys from Hellbent. That's where they were training at the time. Kim Walford, who's arguably the greatest IPF women's lifter of all time. She would come in when her schedule allowed it and got exposed to her and kind of saw the difference with like the IPF and tested methodology at the time. And then was it 2016 or 2017? I started going to Gleason's in Derby. And that was a really great experience as well because I got fully immersed in the differences in programming with like tested versus untested athletes, like less of the conjugate, less of kind of the randomness, more of like that comp lifts. Linear and block was kind of the thing at the time.
yeah.
So that linear and block periodization got more exposure to that. And then I've been at Lightning ever since. But really my foray into kind of more structured programming when I did my first, was it first one or first? No, just my first powerlifting meet. Chad Wesley Smith was my trainer
Yep.
online. I'd never had a coach before then. I was so self-coached my whole time in strongman. Sometimes good, sometimes to my detriment,
Yeah.
but learned a lot. Worked with Chad. We did like linear and block. It was great. Then I worked with Corey Hayes, who was with the Juggernaut and like the Cube camp at the time, because like the Cube was the other big program going around at the time.
Yep.
Was with him for a couple years. He programmed me for Raw Unity and for a couple meets after that, like some of my biggest early lifts. Then I was with my coach Mike Mastel for a few years. Mike was a former strongman pro, turned powerlifter. Same thing, linear block, pretty much the whole time. And then I've been with my coach Paul Milano now for, oh my God, has it been like 5 years, something like that. It's more of like the RTS RPE based programming.
Yep.
And that's what I've been doing for quite a while now. And that's what I'm continuing to do in essence in my retirement.
Yeah. And so kind of diving into some of the topics for training, we'll start with kind of cardiovascular training for athletes. Obviously, powerlifting and cardio, they like to say they mix like oil and water, but I think I'm a believer that cardio is good, but it's kind of ironic because I don't really do any. But that's because I think I'm in good enough shape to where it hasn't affected me yet. But there's
Yeah.
definitely tons of people that I think need it. So maybe give us your spiel on it.
So my exposure with cardio, so like, strongman, it was kind of built in,
Yeah,
right? To the events. At the time too, I had a prowler in my trunk of my car.
hate that thing.
And yeah, prowler
Football.
was kind of it like for cardio at the time. Cause like, meatheads, it's like, well, any conditioning I have to do involves weight. You gotta push weight.
Yeah.
Which, sled work isn't the end all be all for powerlifters. You should do other things. But used to push a prowler all the time. It was kind of built in. Then once I went to powerlifting, kind of just didn't do it at all. I kind of got into focusing on conditioning by accident, almost of sort. So got hired as a firefighter in 2016. I'd been powerlifting for a couple years. Was in good shape, but then went to the academy and had to do a lot of running and it was rough, you know. But then as soon as I got out, I had lost so much weight in the academy. Like, oh man, I just want to put all this size back on. So, wasn't doing cardio, bulked up real quick. I work in a fairly busy department, and then I started going to fires. And listen, I wasn't tapping out. I wasn't like, averse to doing work or getting gas, but I'm like, oh man, I'm working way too hard. I got to start doing something, you know? So I didn't really start doing anything organized until honestly, for another year or so. But I moved from Bridgeport to downtown Hartford, and I lived in like this sweet location in Hartford. And basically, on like my days off from the firehouse, I would walk my dog for hours because I was like right next to Bushnell Park, the riverfront, everything like that. Just walking. And kind of as time went on, I'm like, oh man, like I sleep better, like I hurt less, like my recovery is kind of down in the gym. Like, what would I be capable of was actually kind of like pushing myself a little harder and doing something a little more structured. So I started getting into conditioning like head on at that point. A lot of rower, a lot of bike, a lot of medleys, stuff like that. But I was definitely overdoing it. Like it wasn't structured at all. So I was working with another coach, Mike Mestel, at the time. And after having a really bad meet because I was overdoing the conditioning aspect, don't get me wrong, I ended up linking up with my friend Paul Milano, who was just programming my conditioning for me, and I was still having Mike handle my training. He would be aware of what I was going on with my lifting program and kind of just complement it. But structuring it better, that's when I really saw the gains with health and sleep and recovery. I'm not the physiologic guy, but recovery is inherently aerobic based. Like
Yeah.
if you don't have a solid aerobic capacity, you are not recovering optimally. And if you're not doing anything to recover optimally, like are you all in? Are you giving it 100%? Like I've always tried to be all in since day one of going to the gym when I was 13 years old. So once I realized like, oh, I need to put an effort into this, I kind of just took it and ran with it. But been on a much more structured cardio thing since then. And I'm glad to see the tide has turned with the narrative with lifters. And like, listen, you don't have to do a lot. Like I probably did more than I needed to. And most of that was related to, being able to perform at work on the fire ground. But I think if like you're not doing anything as a powerlifter, whether you're gear, raw, whatever, you got to answer some questions, man. Because like I couldn't imagine life without it. Like if I do skip a session or I get a little behind or whatever, like during the past 2 years since having my son, especially that first year, I really fell off the wagon with it, and I could see a difference.
Yeah, so as far as the kind of finding that sweet spot, because like you said, you were doing too much, and I think the majority does not enough. And for me, it's like I like to get through my accessories and workouts quick. And like if I think I'm falling behind, like I'll add in the sled, I'll go walk on the treadmill. But I also like walk 9 holes of golf probably once or twice a week, and like
That's good.
that's more than probably 50% of people do. And it's like
Oh, no doubt. Yeah.
kind of
So if I had to establish like a bare minimum criteria for like your recreational or competitive powerlifter, right? First thing, start with the step count. Like, try to get those. They say 10,000 used to be the big number, but now the research is kind of showing like 7,500 is good.
yeah.
You know, just basically as long as you're not like stationary when you're not in the gym. Uh, one of the biggest things I've seen from it is sleep. Like I've struggled with sleep my whole life, and then now my career and being a father, it's 10 times worse.
Yeah.
But that was one of the first things I saw lift once I started just getting my step count up in those early days. Is like, oh man, I'm getting so much more rest. Like you think about your average run of the mill powerlifter. Okay, so like they work an office job or like a relatively sedentary job. You go to the gym and you're just like lifting weights, but like if you actually look at the amount of time you're like exercising, it's minimal.
Yeah.
Like you're really not doing much. And then you go home and it's like, all right, well, yes, you lifted weights today, but like, did you actually do enough activity to actually be tired? Oh, no wonder you have insomnia, so that's one of the biggest benefits for sure. But yeah, start with your step count and just for like your run of the mill power lifter, doing some intervals on the bike or the rower is tremendous. We generate, we work in that anaerobic threshold quite often. We rely on that creatine phosphate system to like express power. So yeah, if you, listen, I'm not saying you're going to do bike intervals and put 50 pounds on your squat, but you're kind of working the same physiological systems if you're doing that explosive duration cardio with like a full rest period, sprint type stuff. So if you got a good step count, if you do one or two like interval sessions, if you do one or two like low intensity steady state sessions, like walking on the treadmill, like stairmaster, things like that, it's great. But I really think everybody should do some type of moderate intensity, purely aerobic work where you're in zone 3, maybe upper zone 4. If you're a powerlifter, like I don't know, 10, 15 minutes on the rower or the bike is like all you need, but like really push it, because the research is kind of showing now. I'm more into like the track and field and the general health and the that type of research, but people that train on a limited time frame, like if you have a limited capacity to do cardio, just doing zone 2 or like just doing sprint intervals like really isn't enough. A lot of the literature and some of the belief systems that go around zone 2 come from endurance athletes that are doing tremendous amounts of volume in general. So if all of your cardio is zone 2 and you have a limited time frame to train it, which you would as a power lifter, you're not really going to get the same benefits as an endurance athlete would. So it makes more sense to kind of do some higher intensity stuff whenever you're reaching for that cardio and whenever you can fit it in.
Yeah. I,
Um, yeah,
I,
so go ahead.
yeah, I was gonna say I totally agree with that because if it's funny when people are like at the end of the meet or whatever, they're like, I'm tired, like I'm smoked, like when I get to the end of the meet, I'm like still good to go. And it's like, am I pushing it enough? No, I think I'm just conditioned enough to get through 9 lifts and get through
Yeah,
warm ups. And it's not like you were saying before, where it's like, if you're just doing steady state like that, like, yeah, you're moving, but if you can't get that heart rate up and be able to like perform in that high heart rate, even if it's from an adrenaline dump when you're going to go hit a big squat or something, like
right.
there's so much more to it than just doing the cardio.
Oh yeah, yeah. I just lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. Uh, no, go ahead. I'm sorry. It'll come back to me.
Yeah, and like I said, just going off the cardio in general, I think it's like almost like a trigger word used for powerlifters. It's not like someone's like, oh, I'm not going for a run. It's like, dude, that's not what cardio. You could literally just do 10 sets of 10 box jumps, and like that's gonna get your heart rate in that
Something.
zone. Like there's so
Yeah.
many other options besides just getting on a treadmill or going for a jog.
Oh, I actually just kind of remembered what I was thinking about. So like what powerlifters will subscribe to is like, oh, I'm gonna push a sled or like be on the timer for my accessory work. So again, not the physiologic guy. I listen to people that are a lot smarter than me. Basically, like that whole myth of like, well, I'm a powerlifter. When I want to do cardio, I lift weights faster. Like doing circuits for accessories or like being on the timer. It's not the same demand on the cardiac tissue as being on a rower or being on a bike or a stairmaster or a treadmill is, right? So, not saying that sled work isn't great, not saying like pushing your accessory work isn't great, but if you're really trying to have the full package with cardio development, it's not enough to
Yeah.
just do that. You really need some dedicated focus. And when I say like dedicated focus, I mean, I've had it as little as an hour a week total or like less than an hour a week. So like if you train 4 days a week, like dude, 15 minutes a session, like you can't do 15 minutes a session, you know, it's really, I think that's really all you need, especially if you're a bigger dude. It's not a big ask.
Yeah. And especially with some of the like multiply is a good example when like a squat day, like that can take like 3 hours. Like You're
Oh yeah,
not your heart rate is pretty much normal that whole session because you're waiting 20 minutes between sets. Like you'll go hit your accessories, you might skip them. Some people will skip them. So literally, just like you said, just throw in even 10 minutes. If you're especially if you're a heavyweight guy, like when you're a 308 super heavyweight, even 275, if you have that like low threshold of high like a high cardiac output, by doing that little, you're gonna see so much improvement rather than like
yeah,
a little guy that's probably decent shape, maybe low body fat, like can already handle like a high volume day or whatever.
yeah. And listen, like I'm not unaware that like most people are here for performance, right? But and don't really care so much about the health aspect. But if you like powerlifting, like it takes a decade or more to kind of get really good unless you're a freak. So if you're an untested male that's at a larger body weight, if you do literally nothing for your health, are you ever going to make it there? You know, the other big thing with the cardio stuff is again, you're boosting your recovery, so you're less likely to injure yourself. Like you're really building resiliency. So a lot of people, when they think of like recovery work, they're immediately jumping to like body tempering and cold plunge and sauna and foam roller and stretches and all this stuff. But it's like, if you just like all these stuff, all these concepts, like what are they really focusing on? Blood flow, right? Moving around. So wouldn't just like exercising your heart and like moving the blood flow around just through that, like be more advantageous because you're picking up all these other benefits as well,
Yeah.
you know, especially with like high rep work or, oh, I have tendonitis. So I have to do, 5 sets of 50 on hamstring curls to kind of work it out. Like, because, tendons and ligaments respond much better to high repetition than anything else. You want to know what's really repetition as well and like improves blood flow and gets blood flow to those tendons? Walking.
Yeah. And
You know,
I was gonna say that it's something that's funny where it's like you said, like if someone has an injury or some tendonitis, like yeah, they'll do the blood flow work, but they won't do cardio, which is the best blood flow work there is.
right, yeah. And I've gotten on my high horse about like being anti a lot of these recovery methods, and I still kind of am, right? But like when you think about like prioritizing your training, you know, especially as you get older in life and you have a family and a career and all these other things we have to juggle, all right, I have to be on top of my diet. I have to be on top of my training. I have to fit the cardio in. If you're doing all those other things, like, do you have like another hour, 2 hours a day, or whatever it takes to like do these recovery modalities? Like, you probably don't.
Yeah.
So, if you got to cut one thing out, I'm going to say it's that.
Yeah, and if you kind of look at it from the bigger picture, like the famous saying, "You're the chain is only as strong as the weakest link." Like if you're not doing everything you need, like you need to find that weakest link and work on it. And for a lot of people, it's probably their conditioning.
Yeah, and like just going back to that point, like you don't need to do hours of it a week. Like having a high step count and then like 10 to 15 hard minutes after a workout or on your days off if you're a bigger dude, man, like that's it's going to do so much for you. I just can't speak of it enough, and I'm glad, especially in the raw side, that like it's kind of catching on. If I have had any longevity at the end of my career, I would directly relate it to that for sure.
100%. And kind of transition now, we'll talk a little bit about tactical fitness. So maybe just give a brief explanation of like what that is and like why you're so passionate about it.
This is a rant topic for sure, right? So the tactical fitness space in firefighting and law enforcement and the military is a weird world, right? But it's very, you know, uh, reflective of what goes on in the regular strength and conditioning world anyway, right? There's no barrier to entry. You don't need a degree. You don't need any qualifications. You don't need none of that, right? So most of the wisdom that goes around is just from like bros that are like the biggest or most in shape dude at their station or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay? So like the big thing that we run into in the firefighting world, first of all, is just getting guys to exercise in general,
Yeah.
right? There's this mythology that like it doesn't matter because back in the day it was all fat drunks that did the job and they were really good, and then like well these new gym guys come on the job and like they're first to burn out. Okay, well we can bust that myth by just looking at that. Okay, so fires. I'll speak just mostly on the fire side because that's just what I'm most
Yeah. Yeah.
related to. You know, 20, 30 years ago, pretty much everywhere in the country, fires were way up, right? Especially in big municipalities like where I work, they were going fires like every night, right?
Hmm.
So even though that fat drunk dude wasn't working out or taking care of himself, he was getting a lot of SPP skills sports specific skills from going out the door that much, right? Now we don't go out the door that much. So our SPP for newer people or even experienced people is much lower, right? So you have a gym guy that doesn't have the endurance to keep up on the fire grounds. Okay, his GPP is really high, but his SPP is really poor, right? Well, that just kind of dispels the myth. Okay, so if we have a good guy that has good GPP, if we get his skill set up through training and the limited experience that he can get, I don't care what you say, he's going to be better than the fat drunk guy from 20, 30 years ago. He's going to be,
Yeah.
right? So that myth kind of gets busted right there. And you can go the same rabbit hole with, law enforcement and the military. Like, yeah, a guy that's been to war and is not really in great shape now, he's going to be better at going to war than a guy that just came out of and has never had that experience, you
Yeah.
know? Same thing with cops. Like, okay, a busy cop that is used to chasing people and getting in fights, he's going to be better than that guy just graduated the academy, but like rolls jujitsu and has never really gotten into it on the street.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so the big thing is just like changing the narrative with like, hey, yeah, we all have to do something now. Whether it's fire, police, and military or whatever, these jobs inherently destroy your health. You know, with the lack of sleep and the stress and everything like that, aside from the inherent dangers of acutely dying in the moment at an incident, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of the first thing. And once we have somebody that's actually exercising, um, my coach Paul Milano talks about it with working with like Gen Pop athletes is being a movement optimist. Okay, so like if you have a soccer mom that comes in and like her squat is kind of a mess and she can't hit depth, like as long as she's squatting, like give her one thing to work on and that's it,
Yeah.
right? Like it's not the time to like shit on her technique and like, oh, you don't look like the Bulgarian weightlifter, so you suck. Like,
Yeah.
I'm just glad that you're exercising and like please come tomorrow and please come next week and please come next year, you know. So as long as we have guys exercising, like there's things that we can work on one at a time that we don't have to be like, well, everything you're doing in the gym is not directly related to firefighting, so you suck, right? If we have a guy that like likes to be a bodybuilder, and this is like something I teach with recruits, you know, most guys that go to the gym, they're mostly interested in physique,
Yeah.
right? If they're lifting weights. So I'm not telling you to not care about your physique. Like you can, and that's great. I'm glad you're exercising. But instead of doing leg press and leg extensions, not saying that those are bad movements, like how about some lateral lunges, right? How about some Cossack squats? Because it'll kind of get you better in that transverse and lateral and rotational plane that's demanded on the fire ground, right? So you can kind of sprinkle in some things like that to a physique guy, you
Yeah.
know. If you have a runner, right? I like to run. I don't like to lift weights. Okay, not saying you have to like go completely the other way, but if you are interested in improving your running performance, if you're just talking about the running, never mind firefighting or performing on the military field or the law enforcement arena, if you sprinkle in a day or two of weight training, you know, lower volume, lower intensity, lower reps, it won't interfere with your running recovery. And then when it's time to actually like do heavy duty stuff on the fire ground, you'll be a little more prepared. So yeah, it's really just like not shitting on anyone's pursuits and not buying into this old mythology that's kind of like the constant battle. The other thing is, so you do get the guys that are super into it, like this CrossFit WOD, like everything super high intensity, especially like when they work out in their gear and they make every movement like hyper specific, where it's like they're not even doing real exercises. It's like bastardized firefighting movements.
Yeah.
This kind of gets into the argument of GPP and SPP, right? Does exercising directly make you a better firefighter, or does exercising directly make you a better athlete, any sport? No, right? It increases the traits, whether it's explosiveness, endurance, strength, that are seen in the specific sport. It makes you more likely to
Yeah.
be a better athlete. Now we have to add the skills component as a side note. Like when you're an athlete in any sport, the training is supposed to be general. We can look at energy systems, we can look at planes of movement, things like that. But it needs to be general, right? And your performance in your sport, that needs to be a separate thing. Like you get better at your sport by practicing your sport, right? So in the kind of the take home message I'm trying to get to is, all right, we don't need to like recreate structural firefighting in the gym because it doesn't work and it doesn't look good, right? And it doesn't even translate.
Yeah.
You know, like you were saying, you play golf. Okay. So if I hooked you up to the cable crossover with like a long bar attachment and said, swing it like it's a golf club, Would that make you a better golfer?
Nope.
No, it's a bad core exercise, and like it's gonna fuck your swing up,
Yeah.
right? But instead of like, so let's say you're more of a general physique guy. Well, I go to the gym and just like bodybuild and I do like some sit-ups and crunches or and some leg raises. Okay. Right. So instead of doing like leg raises are good, right? But maybe do less of leg raises. And how about like some cable wood chops? How about some side bends? How about rotational med ball work done really explosively? That's general enough where it's not interfering with the specific
Yeah.
aspect of actually practicing your sport. So yeah, my big take home rant, that was actually pretty short. I'm glad, is like make the general work general and the specific work specific, right? I make myself more likely to be a better firefighter, law enforcement officer, military guy in the gym, more likely.
Yes.
But I actually have to go out and practice the thing to get better at the thing. When you marry the two, that's where the good result comes from. So, like, when it comes to getting better as a firefighter, I exercise. I kind of change my exercise plan to mimic the energy systems and the planes of motion of firefighting. But when I want to get better at firefighting, I got to train on duty. I got to go to a class or whatever and be in my gear and actually do the job.
Yeah, and I guess my one of my follow-up questions to that would be, as far as like general fitness tests for whether it's police, firefighter, do you think they're too lenient on what they should be?
Yeah, I would say so. But what's the alternative? I don't know.
Yeah.
Right? It gets very dicey. So like the military, I know, for example, at least in the army, the PT test was always push ups, sit ups, 1.5 mile run.
Yep.
Right. These guys started going to Iraq and Afghanistan. The army made this program called the Future Warrior Program. And they're like, hey, this doesn't really simulate urban combat. This doesn't really simulate the demands of like fighting at elevation in Afghanistan. You know, like they realized like, okay, there is an endurance component to like military combat, but it's not an endurance event. There is explosiveness, there is a strength aspect. So is doing 100 push-ups the same thing as like, having to drag a down comrade? No, you know. So the Army's modified their test. They had a overhead med ball throw for distance. I
Yep.
believe that's on the outs now. But they have instead of the 1.5 mile run, I think there is an endurance run, but they have added in more of like a timed interval thing, to kind of simulate running from cover to cover.
Okay.
They have a deadlift in there because, like, that to pump up powerlifting, like what's better than picking up heavy shit off the ground? Same thing with firefighting, same thing for police. Like, yeah, you don't need to deadlift 500 pounds, but like, I don't know, like on a trap bar, can you deadlift 315 for one?
Yeah.
Like if you're a cop, like I tell my young firefighters, this is a totally arbitrary strength standard, but let's say you can trap bar 405 for one. It's just completely made up number, but like really strong.
Yeah.
Like we get poisoned in the powerlifting world by like what's good and what's
Yeah,
not.
yeah, yeah. 100%.
Your average Joe, if they can deadlift 405 for one, like they're fucking strong,
Hmm.
So kind of what I tell them is I'm like, listen, if you can deadlift 405 for one, you're never going to be limited by strength on the fire ground. Just because I deadlift almost 800 pounds, I'm not twice as strong as you when it comes time to do work. It just doesn't carry over like that. Kind of the rest is your gas tank and your ability to transition from task to task and different movement patterns and your overall work capacity. But yeah, so firefighting, we have the CPAT, which is great. It's like a stair climb. It's an overly light carry event. It's an overly light arm over arm. It's a more weight appropriate drag. But it does kind of simulate structural firefighting better than like a push up, sit up, 1.5 mile run, something like that. But it's only 10 minutes in duration. And I've seen some really out of shape dudes like survive the 10 minutes and they pass the time and they're good. And they're really not prepared for what being in a busy department is like and actually having to go to a house fire and work for hours, you know. So yeah, that's not a great. It's better than an arbitrary test, but is it complete? No.
Yeah.
But what is complete? I don't think there's really a consensus.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's hard to kind of think about like what the right approach would be to where it's like, obviously you need more police, you need more fire, like you need these people, but you can't make it too strict to where they're not going to be able to get in, and there's like a shortage of people to where if you had those extra few guys who were quote unquote out of shape, that you'd be able to solve the issue better. And there's
Right.
also that talk of like the functional, like on the field strength versus like gym strength. Like there's everyone knows someone
There's
who's
a
like
difference.
can do some crazy shit, like I don't know, just random in their backyard. They picked up a giant log or something,
Yeah.
but they go to the gym and they only deadlift 405, or vice versa. They can deadlift 800, but you go to have them help you lift some plywood sheets up a roof, and they're struggling.
Right, right, right. Yeah, and like I see the same thing with where I work. Like, so to bust my own mythology, yeah, some of the best guys I know like don't work out or like they work out, but I mean, if you were just looking at them in the gym, you would be not impressed at all.
Yeah,
If you light somebody's house on fire and they are running around that joint like, oh my god, you would they beat me. It's a but their skill levels that high. You know, um, so yeah, I don't know exactly what the answer is. Now, that's for entry level, right? The big question becomes, and this is what members of the general public are critical of, and rightfully so, is well, you have to be in good shape to get the job. And then we see all these fat firemen and fat cops and whatever, and like, what's up with that, right? So, we kind of have to factor in, and I have to be softer to this, even though I'm so on my high horse with fitness about what are the realities for our members that are in this occupation, right? Everybody's got family, everybody's got kids, everybody's killing the overtime or working second jobs to maintain a middle class lifestyle. Like nobody's getting rich doing this.
yeah,
So I understand, and especially now that I'm in this position as a father with just one kid, with just when I have a lot of help too, you know, it is really hard to get in there. And for people that don't know anything, okay, I have time to go to the gym. What do I do? Right. So there is an educational component that has to come in. And
yep,
then like if you are going to make it a condition of employment, like, hey, so for the firefighters, let's say you have to pass the CPAT every year. Okay, legally from a union standpoint and from a contract standpoint, you can't just be like, well, it's up to you to get in shape.
yeah,
No, like, you have to provide time on duty with trainers, with a real program to be able to hold somebody to that standard, have it be a condition of employment. Now, getting into operational realities for every department around the country, right? Budgets are tight, especially the police. Like I work a lot of overtime, but the police, it's
yeah,
like it's ungodly the amount of overtime they have to work,
hmm,
right? They're not going to be taking guys off the road to go work out an hour a day, 4 days a week. They're not going to do that, And then like you need the facility to do that, and then you need recurring resource investment with having a trainer come in and a nutritionist. And then even if you do that, it's like okay, well, how much is the buy-in going to be? Because all that those benefits have to manifest on their time off. So it gets very tricky to say,
yeah,
like in an ideal world, yes, yes, I think there should be no firefighters with massive guts. No, I agree. But how do we make that happen? Unless you double our budget. I don't know. Like some departments out west, like I know Phoenix and the Colorados and California, they do have on duty trainers with like very robust facilities, and it is part of your training day. I think with firefighting, it's a little bit easier to take a fire truck off the road and have other people fill in versus police.
yeah,
Like at least I know where I work. I mean, they have calls in queue from the time they get in the car till the time they get out of the car, and these guys are just running around like crazy. So they're not going to be able to take cops off the road like we are in the fire service. So
yeah, 100%.
very complicated, very
Yeah,
complicated question, but
yeah, it's a tricky world, but I think
yeah,
kind of jumping gears a little bit, kind of back to powerlifting,
yep,
before we gotta get too divulged into that topic. With the 2100 total, obviously that's something you set a goal out for. Um, I guess my question for you would be, when you finally hit that, was it more satisfaction, or would you say relief?
relief, relief for sure. Uh, so I'll backtrack a little bit, but be short. So when I first started getting into powerlifting, like the 2,000 pound total was the number,
Yep.
right? This is like 2012, 2013. It was a short list, and that was sleeves really weren't a thing. Everybody was in knee wraps and using the monolift and things like that. So my first meet I totaled 1750 or 1760.
Yep.
The next meet I hit 1901 or 1902, and then I think it was 1945 or 1950, and I just missed 2000 on the last deadlift attempt. So really, my first big goal was to total 2000 because it was. I mean, it's still a big deal.
Yeah.
But that was like, all right, this cements me as a really good powerlifter, and this would be like, the feather in my hat that I want to put in. So then I hit that goal at the Arnold in 2016, and that's when sleeves kind of started being a bigger thing, and raw guys were starting to walk it out. So it's like, all right, I've hit the 2000, and like, okay, yeah, like 2100 is kind of the next goal, but I really wasn't loving the knee wrap thing. It was kind of pain in the ass. I was more interested in the sleeves aspect because I was training at Gleason's, and that's all sleeves and walked out USAPL style. So kind of the next goal was to total. All right, well, I did 2K in wraps and a mono, and I mean, I had my standard was okay, but it was a looser judging standard. So like, I want to total over 2000. At the time, it was USPA. I want to hit under USPA conditions and walked out in sleeves. So then I did that, and I'm like, okay, well, what's the next thing? All right, so go to the next metric, 2100. But then I started realistically thinking, even at that time, like, okay, I hit 2100. Then what?
Yeah.
You know, like I saw kind of the writing on the wall. I was
Yeah.
worried, and my body was hurting. I was really getting into my career. I pictured me and my wife having a family. So I'm like, okay, 2100 is kind of probably it. Like, I don't have the desire to get back into knee wraps to try to total 21 or 22. I don't picture myself ever hitting 2200 in sleeves because I've done the math, and no, it's not going to, unless I go 308 and just completely get very unhealthy.
Yeah.
Um, so I really thought it was like right around the corner, and kind of the crux of my powerlifting career has always been the deadlift. Still to this day, only hit a third deadlift once, just not a reliable deadlifter. And I just missed it, or was this close. Like, oh my God, it had to be like 7 fucking times. And my narrative in my head, and my wife's narrative, and all my training partners' narrative was like, yeah, lofty goal, but I don't know. I had gone from 2039 to 2050 to 2060 to bombing out to, it just kind of was just getting away from me. So I chased it for a total of 7 or 8 years. And at that time, I got promoted at work and was a lot more involved at work and working a lot of overtime, and had my son. And I really did buy into, like, I don't know if I'm going to get this, uh, my squat and deadlift always get a little bit, my squat and bench always get a little better every meet, but it's just too much ground to make up with these deadlifts. I mean, the deadlift was literally getting worse
Yeah.
every meet. And I really just didn't think it was possible. So in 2013, when I did the Ghost Clash, I don't know if it was right before we left or like at the Airbnb, like before the meet, my wife wanted to pull the ripcord on my powerlifting career. She's like, this is the last one, like, it's very scary watching you do this. And, she understands the health risks that go into this. Like, it doesn't correlate with longevity. Like, we're having a family now. Like, I kind of want you to be done. And I totally understood her perspective, and I was kind of right there. But what 2100 represented to me is like what I've always wanted to do in powerlifting and strongman is whatever end goal I had, I wanted it to represent my absolute limit.
Yeah.
I reached my absolute limit, and the only thing left after that was like to get this much better at this much cost.
Exactly.
So that was kind of like my line in the sand. I ended up negotiating with my wife for another year and a half.
Yeah.
But getting ready for this last meet that I did in was it July? Yeah.
Yep.
Regardless of whatever the outcome was going to be, I was kind of done.
Oh wow.
I didn't see a future in myself and continuing to push my body at this level, with being a father now and being as invested as I am with work. I worked with a sports psychologist. Her Instagram name is Cerebral Wellbeing, Amelia, if you look her up on Instagram. And it was the first time I used sports psychology in preparation for a meet. And wow, what a game changer it was. Especially with coming up so short on that goal so many times. Competing was like a negative experience for me, like the last several meets I've done. It is super stressful, and just the prep is overwhelming, and the day of is overwhelming. And like, I have fun like when it's over, just because I can like breathe.
Yeah.
Like, even if I did fall short, it's like, oh, okay, like that's over. But working with Amelia, and again, none of this was like really groundbreaking stuff. It was just kind of hearing it structured and organized. I was able to get into a much better headspace for the prep. I was able to get in much better headspace for the meet. Like I wrote it when I did a post on the meet. This was the first meet that I've done in I can't even remember where I was nervous for like the first squat, but like just had fun, man.
Yeah.
When you get into these very high level meets, especially when you're traveling, like I always called the travel like a business trip.
Yeah.
Like you get a day after and like it's your shot. It's not really like a vacation.
Uh-huh.
But there's always this air of seriousness and it's self-imposed expectation and other people have expectations of you and then you're on the live stream, but it just wasn't fun. It just was a drag. And I think the reason that 2100 finally went down this time was I finally just relaxed and I'm like, I trust myself. I trust the preparation. I trust the training. It's going to happen or it's not. And like whether it happens or it's not, like I'm prepared for it. And something I kind of worked through on my own getting ready for this meet was I like did the morning process for like my powerlifting career being over, like during the prep.
Yeah.
Um, Especially those last couple workouts. I remember it was like the big, the day I was taking openers and the day I was taking because I typically what I'll do is I'll take like openers, I'll take seconds, then I'll do last warm-ups the following week and then like a deload. So like that final 4 week block, like I would go to the gym and like be in my car and I'd have some sad boy music on and I never cried, but like I do that, you know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
like I've had these, that last block of training is always the most exciting thing, whether whatever strength sport you're competing in. And I'm like, this is the last opener day. This is the last big workout day. This is the last top single day. So I kind of mourned it. And then once it happened, it really was this, I didn't want to say relief. It was just this overwhelming sense of peace. Like I accomplished the goal that I set out to do and there's nothing left. And really like where I did it, it was at my best friend's gym and like all my friends were there because normally it's just me and my wife competing, when I go and fly down places and I have friends on the national level, but it's not like my people,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
like all my people are here. My son is here. My parents are here. And what's left? What's
Yeah.
left?
And
I just I set that goal and I hit it.
yeah,
Like,
and I think that um obviously like hearing your story and your background on it, like I can see why you chose like the sense of release versus satisfaction and kind of the scenario that like you were saying, like your family was there, you did it like you said, a friend's gym, and kind of being able to finish that career with like that cherry on top is like something that a lot of people don't get to experience. It's kind of like when I think of that, I think of like wrestling. When I was a wrestler, like if you look at any wrestler's career, almost every single wrestler ends their career with a loss just because it's in a tournament, and it's something that like being able to end your career with like hitting that goal and doing that is just something that obviously is it's rare and it's really cool to see.
yeah, like something really the overarching goal for powerlifting wasn't a number. It was like I don't want to be blown up and like decreasing on my way out.
Yeah. Yeah,
I
don't be
saw
like a
it a lot
Brett
more.
Favre and end your
Yeah,
career on a shitty note type of thing.
right, right. I saw it a lot more in strongman than powerlifting, honestly, because I've always competed at these larger level meets where people are really in their prime. But I remember seeing like some older guys when I was doing strongman, like limping into shows and zeroing everything, and like they were really good once at one point, and I've seen it a little bit in powerlifting, but like you see these guys like keep pushing it, and I get it. Trust me, like
Yeah.
I'm at peace with leaving powerlifting, but like to say like, oh, it never enters my mind. Like, what if I pulled 800? What if I bench 550? Like, come on, of course it does.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but like, I never wanted to be that guy where like you're watching them lift and you're just like,
Yeah, I get that.
don't hurt yourself. Like you were the man already. Just stop.
Yeah.
I just didn't want to be like that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and like I said, it's just like a you got a great opportunity to do so, and hopefully people can get to experience that same type of like finish. And but I think we can kind of wrap things up here. So I'll ask you my final question: if you could give a new powerlifter, someone going into their first meet, a word of advice, what would you tell them?
It really is just set your own path, right? Yes, it's important to draw influence and inspiration and knowledge from people around you, but like you do what you want to do. Like if you're not inspired to do a meet, like fully inspired and fully motivated to do a meet that you're signed up to do, then don't do it,
Yeah,
right? And And powerlifting does not have to be taken to this extreme. You know, like I basically participated in an extreme sport. I envy people that I referee at local meets that like have been doing it 20, 30 years, like into their 50s and their 60s. And yeah, are they squatting and deadlifting 700 pounds? No, but like they're doing the thing and it's sustainable and like they're hitting PRs. Like that's awesome. You
Y-
know, it doesn't have to be like, oh, I have to hit this massive number and like risk life and limb to do so. Like it's okay to like push yourself, but like within reasonable limits. And not everybody that has to do this, that signs up to do this, like has to go down such an extreme course, you know, and compromise their morals and like risk their health to the extreme to accomplish something, you know. So yeah, just really set your own path, set some limits on yourself, have people to hold you accountable in your life, you know, like going down, to speak generally, going down the untested path, there were things I was willing to do and there are things I wasn't willing to do. I had kind of maxed those resources out. And really, the only answer to improve was to increase. And I refused to do that.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm glad I refused to do that. I set limits on myself for the amount of competitions I would do per year. Uh, I always tried to balance it with the rest of my life. I would only compete at times where like my schedule was it was convenient to do so. And I was able to kind of stay true to myself in that regard.
Yeah.
But I feel like the people that leave powerlifting with a sour taste in their mouth or didn't have such a good experience is they weren't true to themselves. They put themselves in this box that they never belonged in. They compromise their morals or like their own personal motivations to participate, and they left burnt out, you know. And like one of my big goals for retiring was I wanted to leave powerlifting. Was I burnt out at the end? Yes. But like, do I love powerlifting still? Oh my god, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be a fan for life. I'm gonna be involved for life. You don't want to be that guy that's like leaves a sport and they're bitter and they're like F this and it's stupid and this and that. Like, no, it was great. It was the best thing I've ever done in my life outside of like my job and having a family. I say it from a position of privilege because I never got catastrophically injured, but I don't regret anything.
Yeah, I
Um,
think that's all great, and I think, like you said, the kind of going off your create your own path is kind of like a sticking to your why. Like your why can change over the years, but when you
yes.
kind of stay with that, like you were saying, like the people that you there's these local meets you go to, you see the same people at every meet. They maybe get a 5 pound PR, but they're there having a time because they're in it for their own reason that doesn't
Yeah,
necessarily concern yourself. So
yeah, and like the average powerlifter, so like according to powerlifting, open powerlifting, the average powerlifter does one meet, right? But even if you do one meet, think about like regular people, like get out of this brainwashed universe that we're in as higher level powerlifters. If you do one meet, you put yourself out there in front of a group of people, you wore this very uncomfortable thing, you're really exposing yourself to a large audience. You have to handle pressure. You have to be organized and like be consistent on a prep. You know, you have to show up and do things not on your own time. You have to be judged by others. If you do that once and you learn those lessons and like you take it to the rest of your life, like it bleeds over into the rest of your life in a positive way for sure.
yeah,
Right.
one hundred
So
percent.
even if you do one meet, like you accomplish something that 99.9% of people will never do,
Yeah,
you know?
definitely. Well,
And it's
I wanted to thank you again for taking the time to come on. It was my pleasure.
yeah, no problem, man. This was a great chat. Thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
Of course. Listen, I don't have a beard. I've got this glorious mustache. But even this stash deserves elite care. That's where Wicked Wolf Beard Co. comes into play. Their oils and balms keep the face fuzz fresh, soft, and ready for action. No crusty cowboy nonsense here. It smells great, feels great, and makes me look more like I lift heavy things. Beard, mustache, or something in between, Wicked Wolf's got your mug covered. Wicked Wolf Beard Co. Respect the stash. Head on over to Wicked Wolf Beard Co. and use code PLDEN for 25% off your order. Shout out to my guy Bear over at Summit Performance Therapy, the only person I trust to scrape me, needle me, and massage me and fix my squat at the same time. If your joints sound like microwave popcorn or you've been limping since Tuesday's deadlifts, Bear's your guy. He knows lifters, he is a lifter, and he's got magic hands, dry needles, and a deep understanding of how to not let your body fall apart. Book a session and tell him the PL Den sent you. Summit Performance Therapy. Reach your summit. Powered by Bear. Literally.